Skipping stitches are so annoying and so frustrating, and they never seem to stop, do they, whatever you do? However, the good news is there are actually 5 reasons why your machine is likely to be skipping stitches. And the even better news is I have got all those 5 reasons covered with solutions in this video, and they're all coming up now. So who am I? I am Kim. This is Quilt with Kim. You, my lovely, are very, very welcome. Let's go find out what the very first reason is, which is really easy solution for those skipping stitches. Come on. First up, we need to have a look at our needle, because if you can sort your needle out, that solves a whole multitude of issues with whatever your machine is doing. First up, how new is your needle? If you've got an old needle in your machine or it's bent or damaged and you may not know that, then it will cause your machine to skip stitches. So the easy solution is to put a fresh needle in. And whilst you're at it, the second reason that can be causing your machine to skipping stitches is that your machine is inserted incorrectly. We need to make sure that the flat of our needle goes to the back of our needle. Those two rhyme, so it's really easy to remember, putting your flat to your back. So make sure it is inserted correctly. The other thing is that, still with your needles, is that it may be the incorrect size. Depending on the thickness of the fabric that you are sewing through, you may need to up your needle size. If you have got too small a needle for the thing that you're sewing, then it will skip stitches. So try that, increasing the size. I've got a whole video on needle sizes and what you use them for, so I'll link that in the description just down below. So make sure you've got the right needle size. Now, the other thing, particularly if you are quilting, bear with me if you're not quilting, but if you're quilting, this bit's important. You may find that switching to a different type of needle will help you immeasurably. So let me explain. These are universal needles, very easy to have these in a machine all the time. However, our manufacturers create different types of needles for different types of purposes. So I've got a couple here. So you might want to try a quilting needle, and you will up your size. So this is a 90 quilting, because we've got 3 layers to go through with quilting. That's quite a lot for a needle to handle. So you want to be looking at a 90 needle or 85 or 90 needle. This is a quilting needle. Now, these are designed to part the fibers as they go through the fabric. That's a really simplistic way of looking at it. So don't judge me on the science, but they part the fibers in a different way to your standard needle, and they can prevent that skipping stitches. In fact, I had one student who was having real difficulties with skipping stitches, and we discovered that it was just changing her type of needle that solved that particular problem. So try quilting needle. If that doesn't work, then my fail safe is going to a top stitch needle, and I often find that these, if all other needles are causing problems, then top stitch needles just solve the problem. So if you're quilting, definitely have a look at changing the type of your needle and upping the size of your needle to a 90 and switching to a quilting needle, and that should solve your problem. Okay, so that's needles covered. What's next then? The next thing that we need to have a look at is our machine. Now, there are a couple of things that we want to have a look at on our machine to make sure that it is not skipping stitches, and that is, first of all, is it threaded correctly? Because sometimes you may have missed a little nook and cranny that your thread is supposed to go through, and that can cause your machine to skip stitches. If in doubt, unthread your machine and re-thread it again, making sure that your presser foot is up so your thread goes between the tension discs. I've explained that in other videos, so you might want to go and check out some of those. And then the second thing with your machine is just down here underneath your base plate. Now, don't be scared if you haven't delved into the inner workings of your machine, because we can take our base plate off and we can check for fluff and lint underneath here. The smallest amount of lint, and actually I found a little bit here. Look how look how small that bit is. Now, this wasn't in my machine, this was on my cutting table, but the smallest amount of thread can cause a problem underneath your base plate, and it could just be anywhere. It could be underneath here, it could be caught around here, it could be anywhere underneath your machine. So give your machine a good old clean out. It does thank you afterwards and sends you roses and flowers and cards and all sorts of things, because your machine really does like being clean. So give that a good clean underneath, and that should help the skipping stitches. But if it doesn't, what's next on our list then? Next on our list of skipping stitches troubleshooting is thread. Now, I would have said this in other videos, I am going to say it again. The old thread that you've inherited from Great Aunt Hilda isn't going to cut it in your machine, however pretty they look. Now, just in case you don't believe me, let me have a look at this. This is an old Silco that I have stolen. Well, I haven't stolen. I took it out of my friend's sewing basket because I've banished her from using it and banned her from using it forever. Look at what happens when I go to snap this. It snaps with really no effort at all. Compare that to a modern Metler, if I can unwind it. They're both cotton threads, and the effort to break this one is much greater than this yellow one here. Now, you will be able to break cotton thread far easier than polyester thread without any shadow of a doubt, but you will feel that when you go and break the old threads that they break really easily, whereas new threads need more effort to snap that thread. Now, I would say that with modern threads, they can get old too. An average life of a thread or a spool is about 3 years, but it does depend on where you have kept that thread. If it is in a cool, dark place, it can last for longer. If you've kept it in sunlight, they do degrade. So check your thread and try and break it. If it's leaving little imprints in your fingers, then that means it's good to go. If it snaps really easily without any effort at all, then I would discard that. But generally, these old threads, as lovely as they look, that you've inherited from Great Aunt Hilda, can be banished from your machine because they can cause you to skip stitches. Okay, that's thread over and done with. What's next then? Number 4 then is, are you going too fast? It's a really simple solution, but if you slow down the pace, it will give your machine time for your needle to go through your fabric or through your quilt and get the thread hooked onto the bobbin thread underneath, make the little knot and form the stitch. Sometimes if you go too fast, it doesn't give time for that to happen and you'll end up with a skip stitching. So it's a really simple solution, but it definitely does work. Okay, let's get on to the last one then, which you may not have thought about. And that last reason, my friends, are these unassuming lovely little spool caps. Now, you may have thought that the spool cap was just there to hold your spooler thread on your machine. And whilst that is correct in and of itself, that it is there to hold your spool cap on there, it has another very important reason. In fact, it is a bit of a superpower in our machine. We really need the right size and the right type of spool cap to make sure that the thread runs evenly through the path of its machine. It doesn't jerk, it doesn't snag anywhere, because when that happens, when your thread jerks or snags or goes through your machine unevenly, even if you can't see that happening, it stops the stitch happening. So if it is jerking and being uneven and generally not being very happy with life, when the needle comes down through your fabric to hook onto the bobbin thread underneath, if it is jerking around, it'll miss that little hooking action. It's very scientific, this, isn't it? Technical. It will miss the bobbin thread and it will stop that little knot from happening, which causes the stitch. So if you're stopping that little knot to happen with the bobbin thread underneath, you don't form the stitch, and therefore it'll show up as skipped stitches on the surface of your project, whatever it is you are sewing, whether you're sewing or whether you are quilting. Same rules apply. It's really important that we have the right size of spool cap and the right type of spool cap for your machine. Don't try and put any generic caps on your machine. Make sure that it is the correct one for your machine. And if you're not sure about the size for your machine or what you're sewing, check out this video that's coming up over there now, because I've explained spool caps in much greater detail. So there you have it, 5 reasons why your machine is likely to be skipping stitches. So I hope one of them has solved the problem for you. Do let me know in the comments below which one it was. If this has been helpful to you, please don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell. I will love you and leave you for now, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.